It's easier for many companies to trade with distant countries than with the EU. That's at least what the British Chamber of Commerce warns. Brexit, the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union, was a momentous decision that has had far-reaching consequences for the UK, both domestically and internationally. While the potential benefits of leaving the EU were hotly debated, the negative effects have become more evident in recent years. And there are indeed some negative consequences of Brexit for the UK. The UK's trade with the EU, its largest trading partner, has been negatively impacted by Brexit. New customs checks, tariffs, and regulatory hurdles have made cross-border trade more difficult and costly, leading to a decline in the volumes and a rise in prices. Brexit has also dampened investor confidence in the UK, leading to a slowdown in foreign direct investment, and this is particularly evident in the financial services sector, which has historically been a major driver of UK economic growth. Brexit has imposed additional costs on UK businesses, including increased compliance costs, transportation and logistics expenses, and higher labor costs due to reduced migration from the EU. And these costs have weighed on business profitability and, of course, investment decisions. The economic slowdown and increased costs associated with Brexit have contributed to a decline in productivity growth in the UK. And this is particularly concerning as productivity is a key determinant of long-term economic growth and competitiveness. The debate surrounding Brexit has exacerbated social divisions within the UK, creating a more polarized society. And this polarization extends to political affiliations, regional differences, and socio-economic groups. Brexit has restricted the freedom of movement of people between the UK and the EU, and this also has impacted individuals, families, and businesses, making it more difficult to live, work, and study across borders. The reduced inflow of skilled workers from the EU has led to skills shortages in certain sectors, particularly in healthcare, education, and hospitality. This has placed additional strain on these sectors and has raised concerns about future economic growth. The economic consequences of Brexit are likely to exacerbate income inequality in the UK. The impact of reduced trade, investment, and productivity will be felt disproportionately by lower income households. Brexit has damaged the UK's reputation as a stable and reliable partner on the international stage as well. This has made it more difficult for the UK to secure trade deals and other forms of cooperation with other countries. The UK's departure from the EU has weakened its influence within multilateral organizations such as the G7 and the United Nations. The UK's ability to shape international policies and agreements has been diminished. And Brexit has complicated the UK's ability to cooperate effectively on issues such as climate change, security, and trade with its EU allies. And this has hindered global efforts to address pressing challenges. In conclusion, Brexit has had a significant and negative impact on the UK, both domestically and internationally. The economic, social, and political consequences of leaving the EU are complex and far-reaching, and it is likely to take years for the full impact to be fully understood. British businesses that export to the EU are now also facing mounting costs 3 years after Brexit as a result of emerging regulatory challenges, including new carbon taxes, VAT changes, and the additional border checks. That is what the British Chamber of Commerce has warned, which I started the video with. In an assessment of trading conditions with the Union 3 years after the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement came into force, the trade body warned that businesses were becoming mired in so much red tape from the new EU rules that it was easier for many to trade with more distant countries than with continental Europe. The BCC Director General Siobhan Haviland warned that looming rule changes would have big repercussions for business that the government must not ignore if it wanted to deliver growth. We need to take a smart but flexible approach to how we handle these alterations to keep their impact to a minimum, she said. If we want to get businesses growing, then we need to boost our exports, and the EU is our number one market. That's a reality that should not be ignored by our political parties, she said. The worst hit sectors are agri-food, chemicals, and advanced manufacturing, which, having already adapted to post-Brexit custom changes, are now facing reporting requirements on their supply chains, carbon emissions, and plastic packaging usage. The EU decision to start phasing in a carbon border tax regime from October 2023 was already hitting businesses, which were required to provide data on carbon usage to EU importers, with taxes being imposed from January 2026, the report said. UK companies were having to adopt processes for weekly and in some cases daily monitoring of gas usage to provide the information related to the reporting requirements it added. The BCC, which represents 50,000 mostly smaller British businesses, urged the government to seek simplifications to the reporting process and then to legally merge the EU and UK carbon pricing schemes in order to avoid such border bureaucracy. It cited a July 2023 membership survey that found that almost two-thirds of UK exporters said trading with the EU was more difficult than a year ago, compared with only one-fifth of exporters to the rest of the world. In the agri-food sector, the UK continues to have worse access to the EU than countries such as New Zealand, with the BCC backing a plan by the opposition Labour Party for Brussels and the UK to agree a veterinary agreement to remove barriers to trade. The report said UK agri-food businesses had paid the price through delays, wastage of food and higher costs as a result, with some companies entirely abandoning trade with EU customers. And Mark Fain, the chief executive of Crocus, that's an online garden retailer that employs 250 people with a turnover of £30 million, said that businesses had recently been forced to give up a 10,000 export order to Ireland after falling foul of EU rules on soil types. It's death by 1,000 cuts. We tried every which way to export the order, but hit barrier after barrier, he said. If you're a big company, you grind your way through it, but it just gets to the stage where you can't be bothered anymore, he says. Fain says that the business was now focused on the UK market and propagating plans locally, but was still supplying non-EU clients. It has to be a bit ridiculous that we can supply the Middle East but not Southern Ireland, he said. Oh yeah, no, it's not that ridiculous if you think about it, I say. The BCC listed a range of other measures to improve trade, including seeking simplified VAT arrangements for small businesses, closer regulatory alignment in sectors such as chemicals, and improved mobility arrangements for service professionals. And Mike Martin, the group director at TL Dallas, that's an independent insurance broker in Bradford with 160 employees, said the firm had been affected by rules that required insurers to establish inside the EU in order to serve clients there. Yeah, welcome to the Brexit, sir. It's very limiting for us. Before, if we had a client open an office in Germany, we could passport into Germany and look after them. But now it is illegal for us to advise, so that favors the big firms that have EU subsidiaries, he said. Martin added that many of his clients were also battling Brexit. The businesses we service are typically small independents, so they've withdrawn from exporting, and we are finding that for some, it has completely put them off trading overseas, he said. The Department for Business and Trade said, in the year to June, we exported over £360 billion worth of goods and services to the EU. That's an increase of 17.1% in current prices on the previous 12 months. It added that the UK economy had grown faster than Germany and France since leaving the EU, but acknowledged that there were some issues. It also said it was working closely with the EU on solutions, including changes to the border operating model and the introduction of a single trade window that will make it easier for UK businesses to trade. Yeah, promises we heard a lot from that government. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.